Good morning, welcome back to the channel. Now, the purpose of this vlog today is a little bit different than what I normally do. Although, I suppose anyone knows my history and knows sort of some of the vlogs I've done on mental health. This is one of them. This is one of those mental health ones that I've always wanted to do. And recently, there's been a lot of I suppose links and interviews that I've been reading about the particular person this vlog's about. I'm up in Dean's Grange graveyard at the moment. So Sinead O'Connor, it's coming up to her year's anniversary. I'm going to turn this camera around. It's coming up to her year's anniversary, and every time I've watched, and I've always loved her as an individual. I always loved her as a performer. And I suppose Sinead O'Connor, when most people, they remember all of the negative press that she got, and linked to various things, linked to the famous Pope tearing up of the Pope's image on live television. From her becoming a priest to her changing her religion to the Muslim religion. There were so many things that Sinead is remembered for, and not all of them are positive, and they should be. And I suppose that's the purpose of this vlog, is to highlight the fact that as a person and as a performer, I kind of wanted to put a vlog out there that highlighted the positives of Sinead O'Connor, not the negatives, because there's far too many negatives. And to be honest with you, I don't believe there was ever any negatives. I think all of those things that were the way she was portrayed in media was because they didn't understand where she was coming from. And I suppose my connection to this is the fact that her and I had similar background. Sinead came from an abusive family. Well, not an abusive family, from an abusive mother. When she was 8 years of age, her mother Joanna and her father John broke up, and the mother blamed her for the breakup. And as a result, she suffered extreme mental, physical, emotional, and as she said herself, spiritual abuse. And I very much connect with that. And I understand the damage that it can do to a person and to an individual's personality, and to who they then grow up in adulthood to become, or what they grow up to become, and how they see life and how they visualize the life that's in front of them, and how they deal with relationships and how they deal with people and what they're searching for. And I think Sinead O'Connor was searching for truth. She was searching for identity. She was searching for an understanding of who she was and where she belonged. And she didn't see, like a lot of people who suffer with mental health issues, she didn't see the talent that she had. She didn't see the kindness that she portrayed to so many people. I mean, Sinead O'Connor was an activist, equal. She was equally an activist as much as she was a singer and a songwriter and a performer. I mean, she had one of the most amazing voices. She had one of the most haunting, unique voices that you'll ever hear. And I think along with that, she had a very unique soul, a very unique spirit. And I think she was ahead of her time. I mean, Sinead O'Connor was protesting for women's rights before anyone was. She was protesting about the church and the abuse in the church. And she protested against racism. She protested in favour of the LGBT community, to help and protect gay rights. All of these things she did, and nobody ever saw that. They always tagged on that, I don't know, crazy girl sort of label that she had, crazy Sinead, rather than looking at the reality of it. And where it came from. I mean, Sinead was 56 years of age when she died. Now, I suppose the reason she died was natural causes. That's what the coroner's report came back. Personally, I think she died of a broken heart. Sinead died shortly after her son Shane had passed away from suicide. Now, Shane was a 17-year-old boy. And for a 17-year-old boy to pass away as a result of suicide is horrific. And I suppose this is what I want to bring to light in this vlog. I mean, he died the 1st of January in 2022. And his mum died 26th of July, very shortly afterwards. And she said that she couldn't live without him in her soul, without him. She couldn't wait to be with him. Which, that's tragic in itself. But for a young boy at 17 to commit suicide, it tells me that there's something drastically wrong with how we deal with mental health and how we address mental health. And I think Sinead O'Connor is an example of that. Because when, through the abuse of her mother, when she obviously rebelled as a young girl, as a young woman, and she was put into a I suppose a reform school is what you'd call it, which was connected to the Magdalene Laundry at the time. Now we all know what happened in Magdalene laundries in this country, and I suppose that's part and parcel of what shaped her going forward. And actually, it was ironic that the Magdalene Laundry, one of the nuns in the school that she was in, actually gave her first guitar. It was kind of ironic that tragedy, so out of that tragedy came the star that we all knew. She actually performed as a young woman for her school teacher, her music teacher. She performed at her wedding, and she was discovered by a guy called Paul Byrne, who was the lead singer with Into a New at the time. It was a band back then, actually originally from Howth. The band was originally from Howth. And her career progressed from there. But all through her career, people always seem to miss the point. They missed who she was. They missed or didn't understand where she came from. Like when Sinead, she shaved her head in protest when her first I suppose contract, her first music contract, because they wanted her to be this pretty poppy girl, and she decided no, she was going to be herself, and she shaved her head to, I suppose, become neutral. But you couldn't hide the beauty. You couldn't hide her beauty. And I don't just mean her physical beauty, although she was a very beautiful woman. She had a beautiful soul. And it was, I suppose it's tragic when you look at what happened to her. And I think, again, this is down to misunderstanding. The misunderstanding of who she was and where she came from. I mean, as a young child, her mother was abusive. There's no other word for it. She was mentally and, say, physically abusive to the young girl. Now, I suppose they did make up at some stage. They made up just when she was around 14 to 16 years of age. And she had a better relationship for those few years with her mother. But then, after a confrontation about the mother's abuse and her denial of the abuse, Sinead didn't speak to her then for a number of years. And the mother eventually passed away in a car crash which took her life. Now, Sinead, at the end of that, went in and actually took a picture of the Pope from her mother's home, which I'm assuming would have been on the dressing table or on the fireplace. And that famous picture of Pope John Paul II would play a part in her life later on in her life. So in 1999, Sinead became a priest. She was the first female priest to be ordained, and she was actually ordained by a Bishop Michael Cox in the Latin Tridentine Church. which is an offshoot of the Catholic Church. And again, to me, that was a rebellion. It was a searching. She was always trying to find where she belonged. I believe she was a very spiritual individual, but her spirit never, I don't think it ever found peace. I don't think it ever, because it was never understood. People always, as I said, I go back to this, the fact that people don't understand mental health. And as someone who suffers with it, I think there's only two people that actually understand mental health. And those are the person who suffers it and the person who lives with that person who suffers it. And I know that in my own experience. My partner, if it wasn't for her and it wasn't for my sisters, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't be walking around this graveyard. I'd be inside it. I'd be resident in this graveyard. And I think that's what happened. People just didn't understand her. They didn't understand the kindness that was inside that person. And they certainly didn't understand what caused her to be the way she is. And that's the tragic part of this. And I've seen that in my own experience. I've often wondered what I would be if it wasn't for the abuse that I suffered as a child. Like, what would I have ended up being? What would I have done if I hadn't lost all that confidence in myself? I mean, I have so many qualifications and so many skills, and I come back on them all. I cut back on them. I'm a qualified dietitian, I'm a qualified physio. I stopped doing it because the person who, I suppose, should have cared and taught me how to care and love myself and nurture for me, didn't. And Sinead was no different. She had exactly the same thing. She wasn't taught how to believe in herself. She wasn't taught how to love herself. If your mother doesn't love you, you don't understand how anybody else can love you. You don't get that. You don't understand that. And it's a very difficult concept for people who come from a loving mother, because it's kind of the norm, isn't it? Most people expect a mother to love. They all expect a mother to love. It's what a mother does, a mother's role. Whereas in Sinead's case, that didn't happen. And as I said, as somebody who suffered from the abuse of a mother, I know what it does to you. And I can speak from experience of how you have no clue as to who you are or where you fit in the world. Because that person, that traditional person who's supposed to love and care for you, doesn't. So it makes it very difficult for you as a person to understand how other people can love you. And if you can't understand how other people love you, well, then you can't love yourself. And it's a vicious circle. So to me, when Sinead went to change, as I said, she became a priest. She then changed her religion to the Muslim religion. And that was in 2018, where she changed her name to Shuhada Sadagat. And again, people mocked her. It's like every time she did something, or every time she tried to discover who she was, people mocked her. And they mocked her from the point of view, oh, she goes again, she's changed again. And again, I'll explain that from my experience. I have qualifications as an art teacher, dietitian, physical therapist. I designed and landscaped gardens for a period of time. I've had so many jobs. I was a taxi driver. I have so many different jobs, and I took and changed because I was looking for something that made me happy. I was searching for something that made me happy, and I never found, until I discovered what was wrong with me, until I discovered what my condition was and learned how to deal with it, I couldn't find what made me happy. So I kept searching for it. And to me, I searched for it in education. Sinead, she searched for it in the spiritual realm. So she looked for, I suppose, a God, an understanding of God, and that's why she was here. Which maybe is why she turned to different religions. But to me, I don't see it as her flitting from one to another. She's trying to find her place. She was trying to find her place in the world. I mean, she had numerous relationship issues. She's 4 children. So she had, so much to live for, and she did suffer badly with her mental health, and she did have, horrific battles within herself, as a lot of people do, who suffer from mental health. And I suppose my message on this is to try and maybe listen to people and to understand and learn about mental health. And this is what we do or what we don't do. And I say this, and I don't mean to upset anybody or hurt anyone when I say this, but most people haven't got a clue when it comes to mental health. They don't. I've seen it in the factory I work in. I've seen it in my own life, in my own personal life. I had a family member one time tell me, don't be talking about suicide because you're only upsetting people. And this was one of those times when I was at one of my lowest points, and I needed someone to listen to me. I needed someone to talk to me. I needed somebody to make sense of what was going on in the world, in my world. And they couldn't, because they didn't understand it. And it wasn't until I met my partner that I met somebody who does understand it. And I suppose the strength that she's given me has turned my life around. But I understand the emptiness that you can feel, and that hollowness that you feel when you suffer with mental health issues. And I suppose Sinead's son Shane got to that point where that emptiness, that hollowness was suicide was the only option. And I suppose the thing that suicide affects so many people, and it's stigmatized, and mental health is stigmatized, and Sinead always said this, and she fought for this. And I think, as I said, her anniversary is coming up soon, and although she didn't die from suicide, but her son did, and I think that had a direct correlation to how she passed away. I personally think she died of a broken heart. I'm sure it's a medical condition, but I do think that's what happened. But her son and many other people who I'm sure are laid to rest here went in the same way, went in the same fashion. They just couldn't deal with it anymore. And it's, to me, it's, as someone who's attempted suicide on more than one occasion, and who thankfully, because of the fact that I've learned how to deal with my condition, I've learned to listen to people, to take advice, to take help, to listen, to actually put my hand out and say, look, someone's going to help you, someone's going to talk to you, someone wants to help you, and to listen to them and accept that help, and to accept that I'm worth something. I have a worth. Where Sinead's son had got to the stage in his life where he obviously felt that he no longer had that worth, he no longer had a place here. And I suppose I hear this, and I had somebody mention this once on a vlog that I did about mental health. As I said, from time to time I do mental health vlogs because of the fact that with borderline personality disorder, I have good days and bad days, but normally I've been doing really well. But when I have a bad day, or I hear somebody, or I'm out socially with somebody and they're having a bad day, I tend to put something out if it's in my head, if I'm thoughtful of it, because I think if that one person has that concern or has that worry, I'll bring it to the light, and hopefully somebody will listen to this and somebody will take something from it, and that it will help somebody. And that's what it's all about. It's about trying to make people understand. The purpose of this vlog is to make people understand about mental health, and I suppose the knock-on effect it can have through families. I mean, I'm looking at Sinead O'Connor as this beautiful, talented, kind-hearted, very spiritual person who was just not understood because she suffered from mental health issues. If she hadn't have had the mental health issues, I think people would have listened to her more. Like when she ripped the photograph of the Pope up, it wasn't disrespectful to the Pope. It was a symbolism. It was the symbolism that was what she was doing. It was the symbolism of, one, the fact that the Pope and the church itself had hidden the abuse in the Magdalene laundries and various other, from children being abused and women being abused. And the church profited from this, and Sinead was just protesting that Pope John Paul II was that representation, was the embodiment of that, because he stood by and did nothing about it. And also, the other thing about it was that was the picture she'd taken from her mother's home when the mother passed, when her mother Johanna had passed away. So the symbolism there was also that symbolism of, as she said in an interview, that it was her way of finishing with her mother. She was literally putting it to rest. And I remember with my own mother, she died, she had Alzheimer's, and I nursed her towards the end of her life, and I forgave her, and I forgave her before she died, but I didn't forgive her, because she'd no recollection of who I was. She actually thought I was a doctor. She thought I was one of her doctors, and I forgave her because I had to, for my own sanity, for my own healing. I had to forgive that woman who did all these horrible things to me. And Sinead was doing the same thing. All she was doing, but the difference was, she was doing it in a very public platform, live on TV, and it wiped her out. It destroyed her for nearly 10 years before she was ever taken seriously again. And then when she came back, there was the priesthood, there was the changing her religion, and again, people just attached that onto it again. So, I suppose what I'm saying is, we need to learn to understand people, and we need to learn to listen to people with mental health issues and not label them. And it happens every day of the week, there's no question about it. I've dealt with mental health all my adult life. I'm 56 years of age. I'm the same age Sinead was when she passed away, and I know people still disregard it, they dismiss it as being almost like, shut up. And I actually had a guy, sorry, I digress as I often do. I had a gentleman on a vlog that I was doing tell me, that I was just another vlogger talking crap about mental health. Get on with it. And that's a horrible thing to say to anybody. That's mainly one of the many reasons why I do my vlogs on mental health, is for people like that and the attitude of those people. That's not acceptable. That's the difference between somebody being alive and dead. And that's not being dramatic, that's a simple fact. The difference between somebody committing suicide and not could be that conversation, could be that comment. Just get on with it. We're not all built like that. We can't all just get on with it. Some people, it doesn't affect them, or it does, but they deal with it differently. But for those of us who do, and those of us who are brave enough to come out and say, this is how I am and how it has affected me, it's important that we listen. And it's important that we do more than just pay lip service to the whole issue of mental health. So, I'm going to finish here beside Sinead's grave, which is here in the garden in Dean's Grange. So when you walk in the door, immediately right, and there it is. God is love, and underneath that is God is great. So as I say, she was a very spiritual person, a very misunderstood soul. There's no question about that. She was completely and totally misunderstood. The symbolism of the stones on top of her grave, her headstone, it's actually a Jewish tradition. There's two beliefs on that. One is that it keeps the spirit, the soul of the person here on the earth, so you can spend longer with her. And the other is to keep evil spirits away. Whichever symbolism you want to attach yourself to, I think it's a nice thought, because I think the world would be a better place if she was still here. So if all we can have is her soul here, well then, I think I'd take that. So I don't actually know how to finish this, other than to say, please be kind to each other, please listen to each other. And when you're remembering Sinead O'Connor, don't remember her as being anything other than kind, loving, talented, absolutely amazing human being that left us far too young, left us far too early. Okay, thank you for watching. Take care.